one of those. So thank you so much for being here, and if everybody could remember to give her your full attention and not chat during the speaker, that would be so much appreciated. Thanks.
Hi, thank you, ladies. I'm going to talk to you about specifically, in fact, Susan wanted me to talk about genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs, and kind of what we're doing here locally in this community regarding the whole local food movement. So before I get started, I just want to kind of get a little show of hands. How many of you know a lot about GMOs? Okay. How many of you know a little bit about GMOs? How many of you know really nothing about GMOs and you're curious to know? Okay. So to give you the lowdown here, genetically modified organisms actually really came into the forefront in the mid-1990s. And what they do basically is they will get like a cell and they will shoot with a high-powered gun another cell into it. They'll make that DNA and that gene basically blend. Or other times they'll actually use viruses or bacteria as well to invade a cell to alter the GMO. Now you might ask, well, why would somebody want to do that? Well, what happened was ultimately the food companies were like, this is what we want to do, is that we want to be able to really sell a lot of our seeds and our seeds only, and at the same time we want to sell a lot of the pesticides and insecticides as well. So originally what they started with was they were shooting into these cells of different foods, starting with corn particularly, that made it resistant to the herbicides, so a company called Monsanto could sell more herbicides. Okay. Yes. Then it started getting a little bit even more different. Then in the late 1990s, what happens, people started catching on to this. And we're getting very concerned, not about the GMOs yet, but just about the herbicides and pesticides and insecticides that are being sprayed on our foods. And people became very, very concerned with that. So scientists said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to re-engineer food. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the soybean. Because soybean is used for everything. We eat it, we feed the ranch animals, the cows, the soybeans. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually inject it and change the DNA so it actually has its own insecticide inside. So, whenever you eat non-organic food, okay, like regular corn, it could be a corn tortilla, it could be popcorn, microwave pop, anything that's not organic. When that corn is growing, it's releasing the insecticide inside the corn. When this happened, the EPA no longer considers it food. It's actually considered, corn today, if it's not organic, is actually considered an insecticide. So this is some of the things that now it's corn, it's soy, it's wheat. What happened was in the mid-1990s, all of a sudden, food allergies really started coming along. And to kind of give you an idea of some of the stats on this, and this is just a few, you can read about this until you're blue in the face. From 1997 to 2002, a doubling in peanut allergies emerged. And that in those short 5 years. Now, 1 in 17 children have a food allergy. Autism, which is another thing, we don't really know what's causing it, we're not sure, we're kind of guessing, but at one time, 1 out of 100,000 children would be autistic. We're now down to 1 out of 88 are now autistic. We're not really sure what's causing that either. And then also in a 10-year period, there's a 265% rate increase in hospitalization from food allergies in children. This is a 265% increase. This is the doctor saying this is so bad that we've got to hospitalize you. So what happens? Well, basically, what's happening is our scientists are now injecting proteins into our food that our bodies think are foreign invaders. So we actually create this inflammation, whether it's around our throat or our face or our lungs or our stomach, to actually push that foreign protein body out of our bodies. So now, since 1995, corn, soybean, wheat, sugar beets, I mean, it's pretty much everything that's not organic has now been genetically modified. This is the most staggering thing of all. It has never, ever, ever been clinically studied on human beings. So in 1996, when this came onto the whole entire scene, America came along and said, okay, we love this idea, let's start making GMO food, and they were trying to send it off to the rest of the world, and we were talking the European Union, Canada, the UK, Australia said, no, wait a second.
Yeah.
You haven't proven to us that this is safe, and we're going to say no. America's version is, well, you haven't proven it's dangerous, so we're going to say yes. That is how they function. So the truth of the matter is today, I have to tell you, we are actually all, right now, a complete scientific experiment. I mean, I'm serious. We're waiting for the ticking time bomb to see what's happening. So now in the last 20 years, what we've been discovering is this, is that it's completely killing our organs, from our livers to our kidneys to our whole entire system. We're actually now having organ failure from the GMOs. What's most staggering has really come to light in just the last year is that these GMO proteins that they put into the food that come into our body remain in our body. They're not leaving our body. So those hostile proteins that were shot into the food are actually reproducing in our bodies right now. I mean, it's serious. So I have one predicament, is if there's ever going to be a revolution in this country, it's going to be over our food. Because nobody that I know of signed up for this. And no company had the right to do this. There's something called the precautionary principle. How many of you heard of that precautionary principle? Is that if you can't prove what the outcome is going to be, then just don't do it. And that really is the most sensible thing to do. But that's not what we're seeing in the food nowadays. It's not what we're seeing in science. It's not what we're seeing with the FDA or with the EPA. That's not the standard. The standard is, hey, if you haven't proved it's unsafe, we give you a green light. So something that's very interesting that happened with, and this is huge right now, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about this. At this very moment, there's another meeting in the Briar Patch Community Room, and it's local food freedom. Have you guys heard about local food freedom?
Yes.
Okay. It's something that's really taking root quite quickly, because there's been a lot of different restrictions around our food. Raw milk, raw almonds, organic food is now considered illegal or a form of terrorism right now in America, and that's in the matter of just the last few months.
That is crazy.
Stocking your food, more than 7 days of stocked food, is actually now since December 31st from the National Defense Authorization Act that Obama signed on December 31st when we were all busy for our parties. Now makes it that if you stock food more than 7 days, you are considered a terrorist. NDAA, you need to look that up. NDAA, you need to look that up. So where has all this been coming from? I mean, it's insanity and it doesn't make sense. Well, it just so happens that in the summer of 2005, I was in Rome, and I just happened to hear about this incredible signing that was happening from the World Trade Organization, and it was something called the Codex Alimentarius. And the Codex Alimentarius was a 30,000-page document that was signed that was going to completely dominate our food system around the world. Well, Codex Alimentarius was signed. I'm traveling around Rome looking for the protests in the streets somewhere, thinking they've got to be protesting this, right? And there was nothing, and I was floored. Well, one of the first things they did was we invaded Iraq earlier before, and as soon as things kind of settled down a little bit, the farmers there basically were given from Monsanto some seeds.
Farmers in Iraq?
Yes, and they're saying, these are your seeds. These are the only seeds you can purchase, and you must purchase them. The problem with them is they're copyrighted, and they're a Terminator seed. Do you know what a Terminator seed is? It's good for one season, and after that, you can't save them. They just die. And in order to grow that seed, you need the other product to make it actually germinate and grow in your soil. And to actually save seed, or to actually barter, or to exchange seeds has become illegal. It's actually becoming illegal here in the United States as well.
Well, that seems more like terrorism right there.
Well, that's exactly yes. Yeah. You look at history, you say, oh, I see it's repeating itself. So the reason why I'm here to speak to all of you is because one of the things I've been very involved in is rebuilding the community. I'm all about rebuilding the community, and I have to tell you, the starting gate in rebuilding the community is around local food production.
Yes.
And if all the things, and I've discovered all the things that I've been working on right now has pretty much made me an outlaw. And all my dear friends who have completely given themselves to their farms and their neighbors and making sure we're healthy are actually now, in the eyes of the law, are considered outlaw. And that's pretty staggering words to have to say, but that's really where we are. So we now have what's called local food freedom, and there's a group of people who are now coming together, and they are tea partiers, they're environmentalists, they're organic farmers, they're traditional farmers that still use pesticides, and they're all coming together saying, no government has a right to dictate to us and tell us what we can and cannot grow, what we can and cannot barter, potlucks, sharing your food, all these things now have become illegal. And you might sit there and go, that's insane. That's just not the case. We have Amish farms right now regularly being raided because they're using raw milk. Or they're bartering, or they're trading, or they're just exchanging with their friends and neighbors. We have something called Rossum Foods. Do you guys hear about Rossum Foods in Venice, California?
Yeah.
This is a co-op where people say, you know, I sign my life away that yes, I will have this raw milk. It's a co-op. They also sell additional things like vegetables and great, you know, locally raised beef and so on, and other meats. And they're like, you know, we'll take our own health into our own hands, and we'll sign this waiver, but we basically are investing in these farms to produce this food. And what we do is in exchange is we get this food by investing in the rancher or investing in the milk farmer. Well, they got everyone up in arms when last summer, literally they got their doors kicked in by SWAT teams. The day after, they had just completely filled up their co-op store, so their registers were filled with money, their shelves were full of their stock, and they came in there and with guns, SWAT teams like this, literally it's video cameras. You can actually YouTube this, there's lots of footage. And they took everything out, completely out of that store in a huge dump truck, and they hauled it away. They then took the two owners and they arrested them and they charged them, and they went to court just a couple months ago, and as they were relinquished, they were let go. They're stepping out of the courthouse, and here came some other county DA, and they, without charge, hauled them away again. The owner, the male owner, actually literally spent 3 days in the LA County jail, and nobody knew where he was. He was not fed, and he was literally in his cell that was covered in sewage water on the bottom floor. So there's something afoot here, and it is nefarious, and it is disconcerting. But the reason why I'm here talking to all of you is because the first line of defense to all of this is to educate ourselves. And I really do recommend that you go online and you look at the NDAA, you look at Codex Alimentarius. I will send you website links also through Garden Goddess, so you can actually, I kind of get you going. But I always say to folks, the first thing to anything is you've got to start the conversation and educating yourselves. So what do we do here on a local level? Because this is pretty intimidating. It's pretty intimidating. Okay, first you know what your rights are, constitutional rights and so on, and you protect yourself. Well, there's local food freedom. They're meeting right now at this very moment in Briar Patch, and what they're doing is they're putting together basically an ordinance that would basically say we do not recognize these laws. And constitutionally speaking, we have every right. This is, if you don't have your health, you've got nothing, and this is all about the pursuit of happiness. And we can't pursue our happiness if we're not healthy, and we can't pick and choose how we grow our food and who we share it with. So there are actually people right now who are gearing up somehow to protect Nevada County itself. So this has been a fast moving train. I want to put a hands up. How many of you knew this was going on? Okay. How many just knew it, kind of like inklings, but you just didn't really know? You've been hearing? It's pretty huge. So what I'm doing is, I'm on the current city council, Nevada City. I was the mayor a couple of years ago. I was one of the founders of the Nevada City Farmers Market. I'm one of the founders of Apple, Alliance for a Post-Petroleum Local Economy. We have the Sustainability Center in Nevada City. We just started a new organization called Sierra Roots, and this is about advocating self-dignity through healthy housing, local food production, and job creation for the homeless. And this is more of a systemic approach, and really what I'm trying to do is, there's many different facets of the community that I'm very, very involved in, but once again, I realize that all the different work I'm doing is now ultimately become illegal, which is shocking to me, because there should be nothing illegal about growing food. So one of the things that I'm doing, and this is where you guys really come in, is, and again, I'm going to give this to Susan, I'll have her send this information off to you, these links and these dates, so you can actually mark your calendars, is, we've had, and we're going to continue to have, a high rate of homelessness. And the homelessness is growing because we already know there's a lot of people out there couch surfing or living in their cars, and once their car breaks down or they can't pay registration, they're going to be actually hoofing it. So we know there's more homeless people coming our way, and a lot of them, as you could understand, are disenfranchised. A lot of them are mothers of 5 children. They're grandmothers now. They've always had their own home. They've always taken care of themselves, and they're no longer able to. A lot of them are young people who just came out of, tumultuous families and don't have that support, never got the real education, don't seem to have a fair shake at a real job. And so one of the things that I did was I went to the National Alliance to End Homelessness because I know myself in the last year and a half, I've known five homeless people to die. 5 homeless people. And when you know them personally, it really does hit you at home. I mean, it really does hit your heart. So one of the things I did is I went to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and they ends up that they have this whole entire flow chart on how to assess people and get them back into either a job and that kind of that self-pride of living an active, healthy life, or ultimately a point of where they're taken care of. And this is why it's really important, and this is how it impacts us too. And believe it or not, this all kind of comes around. What I learned about homelessness is the national average, this is shocking, of just managing homelessness, we're talking like soup lines, that's about it, is costing us, and it's about the same here in Nevada County, $45,000 to $55,000 per homeless person per year to pretty much do nothing. And people go, how can that be costing us $45,000 to $55,000 if we're doing nothing? Well, when people are living out there in the woods and they're malnourished, they're not sleeping, they're chronically ill, they're creating infectious and spreading infectious diseases, then they get arrested, they go into the court system or the social services, or the last couple of years of their lives, we're talking the last 5–10% of the homeless population, they're the ones with like a hockey puck like this. The last part of their lives, they're the ones who, when they get to the emergency, they are so chronically sick, and there's so much complications to their health, it's costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. That last 5–10% of the homeless is costing us about 60% of all those costs, but always in the last part of their lives. So it ends up through fire, police calls, all these different things, emergency costs, social services, we're actually economically bleeding. And these people, once you're out in the homeless, living out in the woods or on the streets more than 2 years, that's when you start really going down. So one of the things that I was really trying to do is take those who are already homeless and either give them a roof over their head, because we found out that for $15,000 a year rather than $45,000 to $55,000. And the $55,000, that number includes infectious diseases. And I have to tell you what prompted me on this was that I work with the homeless, and when I found out they were cleaning out their staph infections in public bathrooms, I knew we had a problem. Okay. And I was saying, how much is that costing us? For sick days, lost days at school, I mean, really, this has to be costing us something. So I started probing into it. So I found out that ultimately we'd be better off to give a house over this person's head, give them that advocate they need to make smart decisions and give sure they have the resources and their meds. And that's $15,000 a year rather than $45,000 to $55,000, and you're employing a person. So we created this flow chart where we can kind of get these people either taken care of and reduce the risk and the expense to themselves and the community, or if they're able-bodied and healthy enough, we can actually reintroduce them into a very productive life. So this is where you guys come in. One of the things that I've been noticing is I'm very involved in many different aspects of our community, from biomass, which is energy production, to our forests, to local food production, to the homeless issue, to building science, to governance, to farmers markets, to post-petroleum type of organizations. And I've been noticing over the last 5 years we're having the same conversations, which is we don't have enough volunteers, we don't have enough money, and we're fried, and all we're doing is putting a lot of time into ultimately keeping our nonprofit status and our organization going, rather than doing the good deed that we all came together to do in the first place. Yes?
I have a question. I went to the farm conference here that was here not too long ago.
Joel Solomon, yeah.
And what comes to mind, for part of your problem is, I don't know if you have access to a vacant lot in town, but, what he did in San Diego in the
Yes.
road, right, was create a garden where you could feed them and put them to work, and so that was...
Well, that's what CR Roots is just doing. We have 3 different locations right now that they just broke ground and they're actually growing. So this is what used to be the Manzanita House as you're going out Rough and Ready, Rough and Ready. It used to be the Manzanita House, is now the Booth Family Center. They're just breaking some ground behind there. Salvation Army in Grass Valley and Alta Street is also broken ground. And then, I'm trying to think of the third one for Pete's sake. The food bank is actually a different one, but what they're doing is we actually have the homeless folks are actually working, but what we realize is they're so malnourished that they can't work for very long, and they actually can't think clearly because they're just, we're talking months and months and sometimes years of malnourishment. So one of the things we're doing right now is actually giving classes on how to cook and eat well and healthy so they can be well enough to actually go out there and do the physical work. So it's really little tiny baby steps like this, you know. And so what I've been doing is seeing all these different conversations, really I kind of call it the Groundhog Day phenomenon where we're all having the same conversation and I keep thinking when will it ever end. And so we put together an economic flow chart where basically there's something called continuum of care, and this is where it's a big, huge, every month we get a group of homeless advocates together, and from the county to social services to different organizations and people like myself, and we talk about the homeless issue, and we all come together to work. But we want to broaden that to include the Economic Resource Council or micro-lending, actual investors. And what we want to do is actually create a call to action. By next fall, we want to have a very clear call to action, which is something like this, and it's around local food production. In 4 years' time, we want to be able to grow 50% of our food all year long. We're talking even wintertime. And this is actually a shoot for the moon. This is something that you go, oh my God, when you really look at that, because it's a big thing. It's like, can we even do that? But this is our call to action. So what we want to do is when we have homeless folks coming in or people who are just living on the edge, ready to go homeless, we want to say, what are you interested in? Beekeeping, Living Lands Agrarian Network, becoming just a farmer, farming the land, aquaponics, hydroponics, are you interested in vertical farms? What's your thing? And then actually, we have here all these little green circles. And when I look at it, I get very excited because I drew this out and I thought, wow, dehydrated foods, high-tech farming, beekeeping, farm lab mechanics, vermiculture, compost, mushrooms, superfoods, herbal meds, healthy forest initiative, animal husbandry, farming the land, wild edibles. We have all of it. We actually already have all that. We don't have to start from scratch. But what we can do is actually invest in it and scale it up, increase it. So what we want to do is we want to take the folks who don't have the jobs, who want to actually start their lives over, and say, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a beekeeper? Are you interested in vermiculture? Whatever that is, then we're going to invest in that business and have you do an internship. At the same time, not only do we have this driving call to action of, okay, we want to produce so much food in so much time, but at the same time, we're actually going to create the demand side. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the jails, the colleges, the hospital, the school system and say, look at how much, what percentage will you promise us that you will guarantee that you will purchase from our local farmers? Because we don't want them growing all this food and then it sit there on the shelves and there's not the demand side. We actually need to create the demand side before they even start planting their seeds or doing that work. So that's a key component. Yes?
Can we as citizens oversee that?
Well, so this is your thing. So this is the best part. So when you talk about flow charts and kind of recreating the economy, it makes you a little dizzy in the head. And so what we're doing is on June 10th, it's Sunday, we're going to take this economic flow chart and all the different pieces of it, okay, everyone's little piece in the economy, and we're going to lay it out throughout the whole entire floor of the foundry. And each piece of this local flow chart, the economic flow chart, is going to be its station unto itself. So you'll sit there and you'll say, okay, you know, I'm somebody who wants to invest in some of these businesses. Or you might say, you know what, I work for the college and I want us to purchase so much. You actually place yourself in that whole entire economic flow, and you sit there and you say, okay, who are the people I'm actually working with right here in the economy, and who are my neighbors, and these are the people that I'm going to do business with. And what this will also do is this will actually help us identify what do we have here locally, what don't we have, and do we need to actually go out regionally and start doing trading, or we need to invest in right here, right now, and actually foster that. So there's many different ways where all of you can get involved. One is by showing up on June 10th, and I'll send this information to Susan to get to you, and just look at like, what's my piece? It might just be that, you know what, I'm a school teacher, and our kids, our lunches aren't that healthy, and what I want to do is I want to grow a school garden, have a school garden, and have, you know, our own homegrown lunches. Or you might be somebody that works at the hospital and says, you know what, I really want to change over the menus at our hospital and actually have us purchase a certain percentage of local food. You might be somebody who says, you know what, I want to throw in $200 into the local beekeeping association so they can do this intern and intern this 1 or 2 people. The idea is, well, I'll give you an example. I have a theory. And ironically, the theory starts from only about 200 feet away from us. In the mid-1960s, we had our own town center. In Nevada City, we had our own town square. And like many, many cities and towns throughout America, these highways were coming through the center of all the cities and towns. And what were they doing? They were removing the town squares and the town centers for easy access. But we lost our place that we come together. We lost our place. We lost that place where we come into the square of our town and say, hey, you guys, Betty Sue's sick. Can someone make her a lunch tomorrow? Or, hey, Joe's doing a barn raising on Saturday. We actually lost it. And yes, we do have Facebook and social media, which is awesome. But I have to say that face-to-face contact, there's nothing more powerful. And that's why we want to do this. We could do this on the internet. It's not as powerful as me and you connecting eye to eye and having that one-on-one conversation. We know that. So what happened was in America in the 60s and 70s, we lost our town squares. We actually lost our place to come together and be that nexus. And as a city councilwoman, I've been working with our sustainability team, and we've always been talking about a holistic vision for Nevada City, holistic where you know that when you do something here, it has a ripple effect way over there, and everything's connected to everything else. That sounds really great, but in practical terms, what does that mean? And then one day I realized, oh, this is what holistic is. And when you say, okay, we have a homeless issue right here, or we have a local food production goal right here, and I, as a city council member, or a police officer, or a student, or a CEO of a nonprofit, or whatever, we're all going to, from our respective perspective, we're going to do our part to get to that common goal. Because what's happened over the last few decades, it's like, well, the homeless issue, that's Hospitality House's issue. They take care of that. The river, the health of the river, that's Circle's issue. They take care of that. It's broken. We're exhausted. It doesn't work. It has to be all of us doing our bit from our perspective. So what we're trying to do is create this call to action where we have one common goal. And whether you're a person who has a grassy lawn in your front yard and you want to turn it into a produce garden, or you're somebody who has the ability to purchase these items, or maybe you're just a shopper who's going to change their diet, you can actually contribute to that common goal. And so what we're trying to do is a couple things. One is change the culture of our community. In a way, it's kind of what I call back to the future. It's very old-fashioned, where we're really doing the barn raisings and we're coming together and we're all chipping in, doing our part. But at the same side, we're also making it very high-tech in that we're using aquaponics and hydroponics and hot houses, and we're getting very creative, and we're using the best of technology to grow our healthy organic food. So there's several ways you can get connected. One is by just going to this event on June 10th. See our roots. There's a lot that we have to do. We have a lot of food to grow. We have a lot of people who I have to tell you, they're awesome people. They're very sweet, but they're worn down. They haven't been eating well. They're not sleeping well. And they need to be nourished. And they have to understand about good, healthy diets. And the people who are caring for them need to understand it too, because right now, most of the people are giving them GMO foods. They're eating GMO foods, and we call them frankenfoods. They're actually not real foods any longer. You know how you drink a juice drinker, like a good juicing with beets and celery and all those things. And you just drink it down. It's all been blended up, and that lasts you for hours and hours and hours. And it's just a little juice. It's just because it's packed with nourishment. The food we eat today, when you get done eating, you still crave it because your body hasn't been nourished. So you keep eating more food, but they're empty calories mostly, which causes obesity and, of course, diabetes, and just it goes on and on and on. So what you're doing today is so huge, because I have to tell you, this is the very thing that I actually believe is going to change our country in the direction we're going in. Because when it comes to food, whether you're conservative or you're liberal, it doesn't matter. People are like, it's my choice. I have the right to pick the food I want to, share the food I want to, and digest the food that I want to. And this is, interestingly enough, the one thing that's actually galvanizing us in ways that I've personally never been able to galvanize us before. And so when you hear local food freedom, and you read that in the paper, or you hear about some of these events, go to it, because it's a huge educational process. And I have to say, it is an extraordinarily fast-moving train, because the laws have changed radically just in the last 4 to 5 months. Does anybody have any questions? Have I scared all of you? Yes.
I would like to know where I can go online to look up some of the things that we're talking about? Do you have a special spot?
Well, Facebook posts, you can get a lot from me there, but we just have one page, and it's literally one page, like a placeholder for sierraroots.org, and that just kind of gives you the basic of who we are, but we're actually, through WordPress, I'm building something right now. I just took down my ReinetteSenum.com website, and I'm putting it up again through WordPress with everything that's fresh and new, because this was from when I was running for City Council 4 years ago. So, but again, what I will do in the meantime is give you some of the links and some of the information, local food freedom, Sierra Roots. You can find me on Facebook, and even my email and stuff like that. And then I can get you that kind of information. But it is moving quickly, and we're just trying to keep up to it, especially on the social media side. It's a lot to do, and we need a lot of help. I mean, everything from website to graphic arts, as you know, graphic design to admin. I'm chairing a lot of meetings, and I have to tell you, the modern day conundrum is just keeping up with all the administrative part of holding a lot of meetings. And I used to have a life, and now I'm just a secretary to my life. I don't know how that happened. But so there's many ways. Again, the objective is that the goals that we create, like this call to action, which I wish Obama would do, I wish our state would do, is create some call to action. And the reason why this to me is so potent, and there's this great story that I'll share with you in closing, and this to me epitomizes the American spirit, which I don't think has been called upon since World War II, is a story that came across my path only a matter of a few months ago, and I couldn't believe I hadn't heard this, and maybe some of you have or saw the video. But when 9/11 happened, the buildings dropped, and the Coast Guard was off of Manhattan Island. And when those buildings dropped, there's this huge billow of smoke that just completely encompassed the island. And there were thousands of people on the edge of Manhattan Island saying, "Get me off this island." You can only imagine how scared people were. And there was the head of the Coast Guard seeing thousands, tens of thousands of people on the edge of Manhattan Island saying, "Get me off," and there was no way to get them off. So the head of the Coast Guard thought, "Oh my God, I don't know what else to do." He immediately did a broadcast call to everyone, said, "If you have a boat, get on that boat, get to Manhattan Island, and you fill your boat to beyond capacity. You take as many bodies as you possibly can." And he's calling out, and he's hoping to God, "Oh my God, I hope somebody answers this and actually hears this and responds." And as soon as he finished that thought, he looks behind him, and there were thousands of boats on their way. Thousands of boats on their way. And what disappoints me right now about our nation is our elected officials and our leaders have not given us a call to action. That's when Americans, I have to tell you, because I traveled a lot, and people say Americans have the most intrepid and entrepreneurial spirit I've ever seen. That's why they love to work with Americans, because we love a good call to action, and no one's given it to us. And I thought, you know what? Instead of waiting for somebody else to do it, why don't we, as a community, just do it for ourselves? When you think about it, what's the downside? We're all healthy and eating well, and we've got gardens everywhere. What's the downside? So I'm really asking everyone, please spread the word about this event on June 10th. I'll get the information out to you. Try to get there and really say, just apply yourself somehow to this call of action. Yes?
I don't know, and I'm not even sure what it is, but in Auburn there's a documentary that's going to be on Saturday night.
Do you know what it's called?
It's called Just Because I Don't Have a Home Doesn't Mean Anyone, Just Because I Don't Have a House Doesn't Mean No One's Home.
Yeah.
And it's a local documentary that someone did about the homeless.
Yes, about here, from Hospitality House, correct? Was
I'm not sure.
Was that the one?
In front of my son, but I
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah.
It just sounded interesting.
Yeah, no, I've learned, I have to tell you, my learning curve on the homeless issue, it's been huge in the last year and a half. It's been something, it's been very humbling, because I realize that we're all, most of us are a paycheck away from that. And it's, and one thing I know with the homeless say, as soon as they become homeless, they become invisible. People will no longer look at them. And that just kills me, the thought of that. And again, a lot of these people were very productive, head of forestry, grandmothers, grandparents, homeowners. These are people that have always been productive, and it's taken me a while to convince the sustainability movement, that the members of the sustainability movement, that the homeless issue is the #1 sustainable issue, because these are literally, most of them are economic refugees now. The ones who are coming now are economic refugees, and this is the first wave of those who can no longer sustain themselves in this economy. And it's taken a while to convince people this is actually a sustainability, conversation we need to have. Any other questions? Well, I did a good job quieting you all down. You know?
Now, where are these people living? Are they just on the streets under bridges?
Well, there's 400 to 500 in this county alone. 400 to 500 homeless people in this county alone. Last year we had about just under 60 students, homeless students. This year we have almost 130. They're living under bridges, they're living in their cars, they're couch surfing, they're living in the woods. Most of them are not living at a hospitality house with children because children don't do well there, and it's just too difficult. And no, I don't, it's just, what we did this time last spring, we actually built 40 micro houses. And we literally delivered them out into the woods. I delivered all of them so I know where they are. Wow. And I've had to move them around. They're about 250 pounds and they get heavier when their belongings get in there. And we've had 2 people die in them already. And I have to haul those houses away, and I'm dealing with their contents. And I'm telling you, when I'm dealing with somebody's contents who's just died because society failed them, I can't tell you how driven I am to stop that. I don't want this to continue.
You know who owns all those trailers that are lined?
Yeah, I think it's Robinson. Yeah. Well, it's a real trick because we're into a hand up, not a handout. And we're into a systemic approach, not just real quick and easy, let me just feed you and just pat you on the head and be done with you. It's much deeper, and again, it has to come, and I'll give you a perfect example. This Commercial Street Boardwalk, you know that little wooden deck, we put that in last September. And the objective was to build that, to create a place for a different atmosphere, to almost kind of create this town center, town square atmosphere. But the objective was to have the police force start doing more foot patrols, because it had to be a holistic approach, where everybody was doing their bit from their perspective. But what happens, we put it all in there, we did everything right, but the police never showed up. And all of a sudden we had loiterers, people dominating the space, their dogs themselves, because it was not holistic, it was not systemic, where everybody from their respective position did their part. And with the homeless issue, it really has to be that where we all do our part. And it's very complicated, and it's not easy, and so what we have to do is convince people that what we're doing is not that handout, it's that handout, because the truth of the matter is, a handout is not working. We've been seeing it for decades. We're also fighting against people have been generational food stamps, where they just have never worked. We're talking generations. We also have something that's really interesting. We have a lot of vets who've returned from Iraq and from the Middle East, and they're really hard to reach because they've been traumatized. Their bodies have been just completely pummeled. Even if they haven't been hit by something, they've been carrying 200-pound packs on their backs, and their backs and bodies are just broken. And they're like, I used to carry a 200-pound pack on my back. I don't need you to help me. There's some pride there. Or there's the women who come back saying, well, I wasn't on the front line. I don't deserve the help. We can't reach them. They're very difficult to reach. And we know that in a matter of 1 to 2 years, if we don't reach them, it's probably going to take decades. So we have that. Then we have the young people who are like, I'm not going to flip burgers for $8 an hour because I saw my parents work their whole entire lives and they just lost their house. Yeah. So I go back to that call of action. If we go to the young people who are more purpose-driven than their parents, the parents were money-driven. This generation is purpose-driven. And we say to them, and we say to the vets, and we say to the people who've lost their 40 years of savings, we need you in this call of action. They will step up because they have stepped up. Lorraine, look at the work that you do. Do people not step up?
They step up.
And when they start swinging that hammer, man, it's like the micro houses. We built 40 micro houses in 2 days. I mean, 140 people showed up. We didn't have enough screw guns to keep it going. People just want to do something, and they want that call to action. And I'm tired and frustrated that whatever reason our leaders can't do it. And I'm like, you know what? Then we'll set the example right here. And the reason why it's so powerful is just right up there, the 4 or 5 blocks up, is where the bill was written, the 39 words ratifying the 19th Amendment, giving the women the right to vote, was crafted right up here on Broad Street by Congressman Senator Aaron Sargent and Susan B. Anthony. This little town and this community and this county has this amazing ability. I think it's all the gold and the crystal underneath our feet. Has this amazing ability to just completely bellow out whatever it is that it's doing. And so we don't need to sit there and wait for the state or the nation to do it. We just need to do it for ourselves because people are looking for the example. So what I'm trying to do is set the stage for all of us to be able to participate and plug in from wherever you are right now.
Thank you, our fearless leader.
Yeah, woo!